This video is brought to you by Osmocote, the planter's plant food.
I'm Amy Grisak, a garden writer in Great Falls, Montana, and today I want to give you a few tips on what you can plant towards the end of the summer to be able to harvest throughout the fall. In front of me is a seed bed that I put in at the end of August or so that has spinach, radishes, and arugula in it. Now the hardest part about planting for fall is actually dealing with the summer's heat and keeping those seeds moist enough that they're going to germinate and they're going to thrive. So what I did is after I pulled out my previous crop, I added compost and organic material just like any other garden bed, and then I seeded just absolutely normal. Watered it in really well, and then what I did was I put the straw over it. It's just a thin layer, about a ½ an inch or so. Watered that in real good, and this will help retain the moisture, and it also helps during the summer to keep that soil from baking. Another added thing that I did, because we deal with a tremendous amount of wind, and if I didn't, I wouldn't have any straw left, is I pulled this floating row cover over the top and pinned it down or weighed it down with rocks. So this helped keep my straw down, which kept my seeds moist, and as you can see, they actually germinated. And if it looks like it's going to get down in the 20s, I'll even bring several layers of floating row cover out, because this will give you another 4 to 6 degrees protection. And the nice thing about planting in the fall is the earth is already warm. You know, in the spring you're dealing with cold soil. In the fall, the soil is already warmed, and that's going to give you a little bit extra time there. Now, some of the other things I like to plant in the fall are the brassicas. The nice things about putting your broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, that type of thing in towards the end of the summer for that fall season is you're typically not dealing with as many of the cabbage moths. You'll still have some flying around, and you might find a few worms, but the numbers just aren't there as much. So I typically don't cover when I plant in the summertime for the fall. The fall crop a lot of times stays more mild. It doesn't get that bitterness that you get towards the end of your spring crop of broccoli, that, you know, when the heat is coming on and then the broccoli's really taking off, going to flower, and tends to taste a little bitter towards the end. This stays nice and mild and absolutely delicious. So the way you time it is, if you're going to start seeds of broccoli, you're going to want to start them in June, because you have to look at your seed packet, look at your variety, figure out how many days it takes until it germinates, how many days until, or weeks, until you can set it outside. And once again, kind of like the spinach and such that likes that cooler weather, can be a challenge sometimes with the broccoli and the other brassicas to be growing when they're 90 degrees out. So planting your broccoli is great. This is going to go well until our temperatures are into their 20s. So it's going to get hit a little bit, but it's not going to get hurt. If I really want to extend it, once again, I'll pull out my floating row covers, put layers of those over the top, and I can really push this well into October, even into November, which is very yummy. Now, behind me is a new one for me this year. It was so pretty in the catalog. It's called a flowering sprout. Now, it's a combination between Brussels sprouts and kale. So I love both, and it was just gorgeous, so I had to give it a try. Cool thing is, instead of the Brussels sprouts, I'm going to have little mini kales coming out on the side. But just like Brussels sprouts, I'm just going to leave it until well past freezes, because the more freezes you get, the tastier it is. So, and you can see it's getting quite tall behind me, so it's going to be really fun. And a lot of times you could be picking off the leaves well into the winter, depending on how cold. If we get a 20 below here coming up in November, which we can, they're not going to do so well. But if we get a fair amount of snow and it stays fairly mild and above zero, I can be picking these leaves and using them for kale chips and other yummy things well into winter. So this is a really nice plant to have. And it's the same with, even if you have just the normal kale, which is gorgeous and wonderful on itself, you can grow that the same way. It's going to last a long, long time into the winter. And the same with the Brussels sprouts. You want to leave those want to be one of the last things you pull out of the garden, because the cold will help them become sweeter and sweeter. So I hope I gave you a few ideas of what you can plant in the fall. It's a really fun time to garden. It's not as hurried, not as busy. It's just more relaxed, but it's really nice to just keep picking and picking throughout the season until winter finally comes and says, that's enough for now.